Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the CalEPA Vapor Intrusion Public Workshop, hosted by the CalEPA Vapor Intrusion Workgroup. My name is Rashani Dantas, Senior Environmental Scientist with the State Water Resources Control Board and the coordinator for the CalEPA Vapor Intrusion Workgroup. Before we start today's workshop, I would like to go over some logistics to help ensure that everyone can fully participate in Zoom. So, language interpretation. Today, all participants in the workshop must follow the interpretation prompts to select your preferred English or Spanish language option. To do this, first click the interpretation globe icon in the meeting controls at the bottom of the screen, then select English or Spanish. It is important that you select one of the two languages so that you can hear the presentation and comments. If you want to hear Spanish only, please select Mute Original Audio. I will pass the mic over to our interpreter, Jasmine, for additional instructions in Spanish. Thank you, Jasmine. So for any technical assistance, please contact the moderators through the Q&A feature. Spanish translation will be available during presentations. However, due to Zoom meeting format restrictions, it will not be available during breakout sessions. We apologize for any inconvenience. Now for some overall workshop logistics. During the workshop, everyone will have their microphones muted and chat and video will also be disabled. During the presentations, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen to alert moderators of any Zoom-related technical issues. No specific questions related to workshop content will be answered through this feature. During the breakout sessions and optional Q&A session, microphones and chat will be enabled. For those joining or planning on speaking by phone, please allow time for the facilitator to call your name to put you into a breakout room. As a result, there may be a slight delay for those joining by phone to join the breakout session. Workshop presentations will be recorded. Breakout sessions will not be recorded. And if you have any other comments and questions after the training, please email dwq.vaporintrusion@waterboards.ca.gov. Now let's go over the workshop agenda. Our workshop agenda will begin with a welcome by leadership from both State Water Board and Department of Toxic Substances Control to discuss the goals for the workshop and future workshop series. Then we will have presentations by the CalEPA Vapor Intrusion Workgroup. The presentations will go over CalEPA's current work, vapor intrusion strategies, and path forward. Then we will have a short break. We will return with our vapor intrusion partner panel to provide public perspectives of those involved with vapor intrusion contaminated sites from community, academic to development. We will have another short break. Then we will move to our breakout sessions. These 60-minute sessions will provide the opportunity for you, workshop attendees, to provide feedback to CalEPA staff. Currently, we have close to 500 people registered for these breakout sessions. Therefore, we anticipate we will not be able to hear all verbal comments. However, participants can put their comments in the chat, as well as email us at the DWQ Vapor Intrusion email. We will continue to accept comments through this email even after the workshop. After the breakout sessions, we will have a closing by Department of Toxic Substances Control leadership, and then we will also have an optional 30-minute question and answer for attendees to ask CalEPA staff questions about the CalEPA work group workshop presentations and any other related content. Now we will move to the welcome and opening remarks.
Morning, everyone, and welcome to the CalEPA Vapor Intrusion Public Workshop Kickoff. My name is Craig Sanchez, Technical Services and Special Projects Division Chief at DTSC. Let me start by thanking everyone for participating today. Just by the hundreds of people attending speaks to the importance of this topic. There have been a lot of changes in industry, retirements, new hires, and COVID, and the state of California is no different. Our new management has been working closely within DTSC, Water Board, and OHIA to train new staff on holistic solutions to VI, consistent with the elements we are presenting today, including alternative approaches to site investigations, integrated source removal actions, paths to closure, case studies, database management, and alternative attenuation factors, and of course, ongoing collaboration with our EJ partners, developers, consultants, and stakeholders. Topics discussed today are not regulation. They are to facilitate meaningful solutions to vapor intrusion. Information obtained today will be used to recalibrate the fall technical vapor intrusion workshops. We view this as evergreen and look forward to ongoing communication and collaboration. And now I will turn it over to Annalisa.
Thank you, Craig, and good morning to you all. I'm Annalisa Kihara, Assistant Deputy Director in the Division of Water Quality at the State Water Board. I'd like to echo Craig's thanks to you all participating in this kickoff meeting today, and also share our appreciation for the representation of the various perspectives on vapor intrusion here with us. We are all looking forward to the input we received today and in the upcoming additional workshops, as Craig had mentioned. It's important because we want these information sharing discussions to be useful to you and for us to achieve our priority to protect human health and the environment when we remediate contaminated sites, especially for residential use. Environmental justice and racial equity is equally important to our organizations, and we are committed to evaluating and making decisions on sites vulnerable to vapor intrusion impacts with this lens in mind. So I'd like to also express my gratitude to the wonderful DTSC, OHIA, and Water Board team who put a lot of time and thought into the content and materials for these workshops, and then to all of you here with us for taking the time to participate and collaborate with us moving forward. So with that, I'll pass the mic to the next speaker on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Annalisa. And now we will have presentations by our CalEPA workgroup staff.
And good morning, everybody. While I pull up my slides here, let me get the slideshow ready to go. Want to just confirm everybody can see my presentation?
Yes, we can, Steve.
Great, thank you, Rashani. And again, welcome everybody to this kickoff workshop for vapor intrusion. My name is Steve McMasters. I'm section lead for the State Water Resources Control Board's Division of Water Quality's cleanup and UST prevention programs, and have been with the vapor intrusion team since 2014. So the CalEPA vapor intrusion team is comprised of 3 agencies within the CalEPA umbrella, including our Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, or WEHA. We have our Department of Toxic Substance Control, or DTSC. We also have our California Water Board offices, including us here at the Division of Water Quality, under the State Water Resources Control Board, and multiple regional water quality control boards, including our Los Angeles, Santa Ana, Central Valley, and San Francisco Bay. The CalEPA vapor intrusion team was founded in 2014 to address trichloroethylene short-term response action levels, and also to promote consistent vapor intrusion practice amongst our agencies. Before I go any further, we do want to do a little poll with you all to help us understand our audience better. So if you could, please identify what affiliation you represent today. And I think that poll is up. Yes, it is. Very good. Oh, the numbers are expected here. We'll give it a few more minutes. Looks like we're getting about pretty good representation, slowing down. Let's go ahead and share the results today. Very good. So it looks like we have about 53% of you are environmental consultants as predicted. However, we do have representation from all affiliations. Pretty low percent for the builders, but I'm glad to see a lot of our community advocates are also present today. And you will see some local government environmental regulators as well. So great, very good. And I anticipate we're going to have some latecomers, and these numbers may change down the road. So thank you very much. All right, let's continue. And I'm going to go through a little bit more on the logistics and then jump into the update for the water or the CalEPA team here. But for today's purpose, first of all, we are very hopeful that these workshops provide a venue for discussion on vapor intrusion challenges and successes. We do want to share the CalEPA team's efforts since posting the supplemental guidance in 2023. I'm going to kick off that update and then hand off to Ben Stamfeld with DTSC to give you an update on the efforts from our Path to Closure team. Then we're going to hear from Tina Years to provide an update on the GeoTracker vapor intrusion dataset that we've been trying to get robust. Following the CalEPA update, as Rashani said, we did have invited a number of vapor intrusion practitioners to present on their perspectives on vapor intrusion. We're going to finish up that day with those breakout rooms for facilitated discussion on our proposed future workshop topics. With these workshops, we're hopeful that we can instill a sense of partnering amongst you all as we all have a role on the vapor intrusion front. Also, at the end of today's workshop, some members of the CalEPA team will stay on for those questions that you may have. So we're calling that kind of a bonus 30 minutes there, the kind of a QA session for you all. I did mention partnership, and with the goal of partnership, I did include a quote from a colleague of mine, Joe Furan, who has since retired and was our professional facilitator for our formalized partnering with the Department of Navy, DTSC, and our Lahana Regional Board for the China Lake Naval Air Weapons Station. I've been part of that partnering since 2018, and the group has made tremendous success. And to quote Joe, partnering is a paradigm shift. From unconscious mistrust, misunderstanding, arm's length, formalized relationships, and interactions based on controls and sanctions, to a conscious recognition of similar mandates and goals, common interests and needs, regular face-to-face interaction, discipline, collaboration, and mutual accountability. I know we're not going to hit on all levels of partnering for these workshop series, but at least that we can provide a venue to achieve some of these. So that is kind of our goal here. All right. As for those future workshops, here is our tentative and proposed schedule for the vapor intrusion workshop series. We're planning 6 workshops in total, including today's kickoff and 5 others with the proposed focus topics, including vapor intrusion in the community, conceptual site model and best practices, building a vapor intrusion data set through GeoTracker, collective decision-making with our vapor intrusion partners, and then hosting a workshop to discuss vapor intrusion screening through site closure. Please note that this schedule is tentative. At this time, it can be modified based on discussions we have today, but we also have a poll, another poll for you all. So of the proposed focus workshops, please identify which topic you think would be best for us to host first. I'll wait to get that poll in. We're halfway through. About 3/4 through for the participants, and thank you all for taking this poll. Oh, very good. So yeah, let's go ahead and share the results here. I think we're pretty close. Yeah, so it looks like a lot of you have interest in vapor intrusion closure. Next would be the conceptual site model and best practices, and then also a lot of interest in vapor intrusion in the community. So that's great. Well, very good. And I just want to say we're going to consider these results and also the discussions we have today on how we plan the next thing. The team really has to think and put a lot of thought into these, so we will definitely take this into our consideration. So thank you very much. Did we share those results? I want to make sure.
Yes, we did.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So as mentioned, to finish up this workshop, we're going to have a number of breakout sessions and virtual rooms within the Zoom platform to help plan and narrow down those main topics. for those upcoming workshops. The breakout sessions, as Rashani said, will be 60 minutes in length for open discussion that will be facilitated with a timekeeper and note taker. Following the breakout session, we're going to bring everybody back into the main room, and the note takers are going to report back to everybody on those main themes that were heard or discussed. And enough with some of those logistics. Let's talk about, give you an update on what the CalEPA team has been up to. All right. So right now, our primary goal is implementing and support use of the supplemental guidance. This was released in February 2023. To help support use of this guidance, we've held staff training in May 2023. We also created public training videos and hosted a live Q&A session in March 2024. We've also provided an overview on the training on the supplemental guidance of both the 2024 and 2025 Association for Environmental Health and Sciences Foundation, or AHS conference. Also to promote the development and use of the GeoTracker vapor intrusion features, Stephen Mullery and Tina Uris within my section have provided significant training on the GeoTracker electronic submittal information requirements and the processes, and also on the vapor intrusion tools for water board staff, for the public, and for our local agencies that are implementing a voluntary cleanup program back in 2024. DTSC has also not been quiet during this time. DTSC has recently modified the Johnson & Edinger model. I believe we have Robbie Edinger on within our group today, and will be part of the one of the facilitators as part of the breakout room. But they also updated their user guide back in 2024. This was done to address known programming bugs. They also want to apply the 2018 California toxicity values and billing parameters. They also created new options to address capillary fringe modeling for a groundwater vapor intrusion source. The team did want to point out that the Johnson & Edinger model or any model should not be used for initial screening. We do say that in the supplemental guidance, but be used as a supplemental line of evidence when supported by a robust conceptual site model. So the Johnson & Edinger model can be used as a line of evidence to help estimate future risk at redevelopment sites, can help assess properties where indoor air sampling cannot be completed, and also help the development of site-specific attenuation factors and potential cleanup goals. Additionally, DTSC's Human and Ecological Risk Office, or HERO, has updated 3 relevant HERO notes in April of this year, including HERO Note 10 to comply with the 2018 toxicity criteria regulations, HERO Note 1 to address default exposure factors for human health risk assessments, and HERO Note 3 that updated screening goals. And you might be asking, well, wait, wasn't the state board also developing vapor intrusion policy? The answer is yes. We were definitely working in 2022 on development of the vapor intrusion policy, and we did host in that year a CEQA scoping meeting. But I did want to let the audience know and everybody formally know that the State Water Board is holding off on further work on this proposed policy, so we can align our priorities with implementation of the supplemental guidance, support development of this GeoTracker vapor intrusion data set, and continue the coordination with our sister agencies and regional boards on the holistic approach towards vapor intrusion. So at this time, we're really unsure if we're going to open the policy in the near future or long term. We'll see how things play out. As noted, the CalEPA team is focused now on addressing vapor intrusion holistically. I've highlighted some of the major areas we are focused on, including continued coordination meetings amongst our agencies, and also conducting project-specific efforts, including the vapor intrusion dataset and GeoTracker team. We have a team working on multiple lines of evidence, a team that you're going to hear from today with Ben, Path to Closure. We also have a small team working for staff training on all vapor intrusion topics. And lastly, we also want to talk about vapor intrusion decision-making amongst our agencies. You're going to notice some synergy amongst our planned focus workshops that we have with these individual efforts. Just to summarize, since posting supplemental guidance, this timeline roughly shows the milestones and achievements by the CalEPA team since 2023. Now we're moving into our next phase, which is the workshop series that are going to be held this year and in early part of 2026. And for my last slide today, before I hand off to Ben and Tina for their update, I did want to share our future short-term and long-term goals and project-related vapor intrusion projects. So right now we have our public workshops in the short term, and we're always going to be continuing to support our regulators and regulated community on the vapor intrusion front, which includes staff training in the short term, and we do want to morph that into public training in the long term. We're going to continue and promote the holistic multiple lines of evidence approach for addressing vapor intrusion sites. In the short term and long term, we're going to be supporting use of the supplemental guidance to evaluator sites that are prone to vapor intrusion. And then, of course, using a lot of the information that we get by implementing that guidance and building that GeoTracker data set, we do want to evaluate vapor intrusion or conduct a vapor intrusion study from that information for the state of California for potential attenuation. So that sums up my slide today. Here is my contact information and our relevant websites for the State Water Board and DTSC. With that, I'm going to hand it off to Ben to give you an update on the Path to Closure team. All right, thank you very much, everybody.
All right, thank you, Steve. All right, Path to Closure. I'm sure everyone's interested, especially from the last poll, which is still up in my screen. But my name's Ben Stanfill. I am the Southern California SMRP Division Chief for DTSC. For the last year, the CalEPA VI team has met to discuss the path to closure for our VI sites, and we're evaluating solutions to common problems. But before we share some of our preliminary thoughts, we'd like to hear from you. Danielle, could you bring up the poll on what are some of the biggest barriers folks are seeing to closing vapor intrusion sites? All right, thank you. We're still going, and I just want to say I really appreciate how quickly everyone is answering the polls. We're a little past halfway there. We'll keep it open for another 30 seconds or so. The last 100 of you to get in your answers. All right, I think things are slowing down. Danielle, if you can share the results. And we've got a pretty good mix. Groundwater contamination, long-term uncertainty is kind of our highest result. Public engagement, everyone's got that figured out, which is great news. But everything else is kind of a good mix. So let's talk a little bit about what the CalEPA VI team found. During our group, we surveyed caseworkers and project managers at both DTSC and the Water Board for sites that have been closed recently after the supplemental guidance was issued. We asked case managers and project managers to give us 3 general categories. What's been clean closed, what has entered a mitigation system and long-term monitoring phase, and then, if there's a site that we've crossed VI risk off the list, but there is still ongoing concerns with, say, groundwater, we wanted to know about that too. From that list of sites that we developed, we've been developing case studies that are going to pop up in future workshops in the series that Steve was talking about. But we also identified just what are some common themes for VI sites that achieved, good endpoints. One of the things that we realized immediately was the types of VI endpoints we were asking about were actually too small. There were a lot of other potential off-ramps for VI sites that were worth considering. No further action is still the gold standard, where we have unrestricted land use for unlimited exposure. But in a number of sites, there were other possibilities. The Water Board's low threat closure process for UST sites came into play. In some cases, DTSC or the Water Board could issue a media-specific closure That's like soil is closed, but we're still going to watch vapor or groundwater. Uh, DTSC's language is a little bit different, where we'll put things into a certified remedy with land use controls, again, with some ongoing obligations, but really a minimal investment by everyone going forward. But in other cases, even remedy construction complete letters or suitable to occupy letters that would be sent over to the county were good VI endpoints that were able to help projects achieve their goals, address vapor intrusion, and keep things moving forward. We also saw a number of themes for success in vapor intrusion sites, where we were really hitting those endpoints and seeing good success. We had robust conceptual site models. We had site-specific data both over time and good spatial coverage of the site. Uh, Concentrations in the subsurface tended to be stable to decreasing. They were low. They weren't always below screening levels. In fact, for many of the sites that reached a VI endpoint or some sort of closure, there were still screening concentrations of VOCs above screening levels in the subsurface. Now, it's a little bit different in indoor air. We generally, if concentrations were above screening levels in indoor air, there was more work to be done. But in the subsurface, there was some more flexibility. If there was a source on site, that was addressed somehow, whether that was SVE, excavation, some sort of remediation happened for any on-site source areas. And then in many cases, there was some amount of long-term stewardship that was required for some of the sites, but importantly, not all. Beyond just vapor intrusion, we identified some other best practices just for working with DTSC or the water board on any sites. It was really important to have scoping meetings before major deliverables and even at the beginning of the process to make sure that the consultants, the property owners, the regulators all agreed, or at least were having conversations on what are the main goals for the work that we're doing. Oftentimes, where we would see delays were when remedial action plan, response plan, etc., surprised the regulator team. Clear communication about deadlines and needs and pulling us in early and often was also a big factor in success. We're government agencies. We have a process. If you need something tomorrow, we will probably not be able to do that. But letting us know 6 months, a year, even 18 months in the future really helped, because we were able to coordinate resources and move toward those deadlines to the extent that we could. Some things always came up, but in general, we had a lot of good, clear early communication about what project needs were. And then finally, addressing comments and requests quickly. Sometimes they can feel a little difficult, but in general, being able to say, let's get together, let's work out the issues, let's not let this linger and address later, really helped us move forward on projects. And this is a very, very abbreviated version of one of those case studies, but just acknowledging that these do happen and sites are moved forward towards VI endpoints with some concentrations above conservative screening levels left in the subsurface. This was a site in the Bay Area. It was a vacant lot, formerly light industrial. There was not a lot of PCE, but it did show up consistently and above screening levels in at least one probe. Through the work with the consultant, we proposed alternate attenuation factors based on the small lateral distribution of PCE, based on a demonstration that there weren't any on-site sources, and incorporating the construction plans, which included VIMs and a shorter period of long-term monitoring to make sure things were good. So this is just one example. We'll get into more details as we're giving more case studies in future workshops. But with that, I'd like to turn it over to Tina to discuss the GeoTracker work group.
Thanks, Ben, for that fantastic update. And I'm going to take the screen from you. There we are. So howdy everyone, I'm Tina Uris, a geologist with the State Water Board Division of Water Quality and a team leader of the VI dataset team. Today I'll be talking with you all about building a California vapor intrusion attenuation factor dataset, the goals, future use, process, VI data in GeoTracker, projected milestones, estimated schedule, and also sharing resources. So starting with the goals for collecting California-specific VI data, we're looking to address California limitations in a national database compiled and evaluated by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and other recently published studies, such as evaluating buildings without basements, buildings in warmer climates, and by evaluating the data by buildings as well as by pairs. To accomplish this, we are compiling a robust statewide VI dataset that is representative of California climates, building design, and use from the Department of Toxic Substances Control, water boards, local agency cleanup programs. Once we have sufficient VI data, we will evaluate to potentially develop one or more California-specific screening attenuation factor scenarios. For example, a residential building design scenario or a commercial building design scenario. Or conclude that the US EPA's recommended attenuation factor from the national database is appropriate for application in California. The future use of the California-specific screening attenuation factor scenarios will be used to estimate indoor air concentrations when we only have subsurface concentrations, to help us understand the potential VI risk to occupants without sampling indoor air. This tool will be used in the screening step to identify if additional action is needed to further evaluate or mitigate risk, or if no further action is warranted. The first step in this process is collecting, analyzing, and reporting the VI data, which includes indoor air, subslab soil gas, outdoor air, crawl space, sewer air gas, and groundwater sample location, latitude and longitude, and analytical lab data, plus building-specific information about the building, such as age, design, and foundation type. Most of the VI data is required to be electronically submitted. However, the supplemental building-specific information is voluntary, but critical to understanding how physical building attributes influence the rate of attenuation. Collectively, this information is called VI data. For more information on recommended sample strategies and methods, please see the Supplemental Vapor Intrusion Guidance, the 2011 VIG, and the Soil Gas Advisory. Next, the VI data is electronically uploaded into GeoTracker by the RP, consultant, or laboratory. Once submitted, the caseworker validates the VI data by QA/QCing the submitted VI data to ensure data is accurate, complete, and consistent. After being accepted, it is stored in the GeoTracker database and is publicly available to us all. The VI data will be housed in GeoTracker. However, the VI data will be extracted from the GeoTracker database into an Excel spreadsheet dataset to be paired, filtered, and evaluated. This dataset will be the basis for evaluating one or more California-specific attenuation factor scenarios or support US EPA's recommended attenuation factor being applicable in California. Throughout this process, we will communicate the VI data progress, but ultimately, at the conclusion of the project, we will compile all of the information and share the findings and recommendations and make it available to the public. Currently, we are in the data collection process, collecting the VI data and housing it in GeoTracker. So that looks like what we see here on the screen on the right-hand side is 135 open cleanup cases with VI building information statewide. And comparing that to the over 5,000 open cleanup cases statewide, not including our underground storage tank petroleum cases, we have a lot more data we can collect to build that robust data set statewide. Something to note is we do have a higher case population in the San Francisco Bay Area and LA region with VI data. However, comparing to open cleanup cases again, we see there are more cases we need to consider as part of the dataset than currently represented. So to break down the database needs to build a robust data set, more statewide case representation to evaluate arid and colder climates in California is needed. California has state-specific building codes and regulations, specifically Title 24, which utilizes climate zones based on temperature, precipitation, humidity, and other factors. And over time, those have been updated and modified, so capturing a wide range of building ages will be beneficial in the evaluation process. Another need is collecting building area of the building's foundation to better evaluate the amount of airspace within a building. We also need multiple rounds of paired sampling events to include in the dataset. Prior to pairing the location to buildings, we will rely on spatial attributes and need the latitude and longitude of sample location. A key component of the evaluation is the analytical lab data, and we will need this information uploaded into GeoTracker to use the building. Lastly, we know heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, HVAC, operation can influence VI. So noting the operation status during sample event will support data evaluation. The database is collecting more data than noted here. However, these data needs represent what we are seeing as needed improvements to the overall building of the robust dataset. VI behavior is tricky, and incorporating the supplemental lines of evidence into the dataset for evaluation is extremely important. We need your help to upload site data to support building a robust VI dataset. If we partner in the data collection and uploading of VI data, we can build this quicker and be confident that we have reached the goals of addressing limitations in other databases and studies and build a representative database of California. So here we see our projected milestones and estimated schedule. We hope to have a robust data set within the next couple of years. However, building it is a partner effort, and the schedule may extend depending on how much data we can collect. Today, I look forward to seeing many of you in the VI database breakout session, where we can dive in more and hear from you all. In the fall, we will continue engagement, outreach, support, and training. What this looks like will be geared toward the feedforward input we hear from you all today. Tentatively, we are planning on a VI database public workshop in early 2026, which will be more in the details from data collection to statistical methods. After the workshop, the DTSC Water Board VI dataset team will finalize the study evaluation criteria, integrating feed-forward input from the workshop. Once we have the criteria, we will conduct an initial evaluation, tentatively mid-2026. And from there, based on the VI data we receive, we will evaluate and share findings as we build the robust database. So we really do want to collect the needed quality data to evaluate California's specific attenuation factor scenarios to use in screening as soon as we can, and we need your help to do so. So our next poll question is, how can we partner to accomplish collecting data needed for the data set? And the poll is open. You have a few options, and I think you can select more than one too. So feel free to let us know if there's a few things that could help out here. I see the public dashboard with current needs and tracking is a good one. Oh, and also a checklist for upload. Those would be excellent tools for us all. And they're still coming in. Wonderful. Appreciate you all taking the time to help us out here. All right, I think it's, oh no, there's still some coming in. Might take some time to read it as well. All right, I think we slowed down a little, Danielle. There we go. All right, we're sharing the results now, and it looks like vapor intrusion data checklist for upload would be a great tool to accomplishing collecting data needed for this database. So it looks like I've got some homework to do, work with the team to getting a checklist. Also potentially a dashboard with current data needs and tracking as well. And before we navigate away from this slide, I just want to say we really have an exciting opportunity to build a unique data set, unlike previously compiled ones, as the data being collected and inputted into the data set is from the RPs, consultants, and laboratories. And what is inputted is what we will be using in the evaluation. So this effort is truly collaborative, and I look forward to partnering with you all to accomplish collecting the data needed. So thank you all for participating in that poll. That really is helpful. But in the meantime, while we're working on getting those new tools out for everyone, we do have a handful of awesome GeoTracker and VI data resources available online at the Waterboard Site Cleanup Vapor Intrusion website shown here at the top of the page. This includes a webinar video and presentation on uploading information with a live demonstration of tools and features, plus a guidance document for using the VI building tool features. In addition, there are links to more guidance on the electronic submittal of information process as well on this website. If you have any questions on GeoTracker, please reach out to the GeoTracker help desk. And if you have any questions on the VI database, please email us at dwq-vaporintrusion@waterboards.ca.gov. We look forward to supporting you all in your data uploads. So this concludes the update on the Building VI dataset for California, and I truly enjoyed sharing this update with you all today. So big thank you for being here, and I'll hand it back over to Rashani.
Thank you, Tina. All right, everybody, I hope you've heard some great information. We're going to go to a 5-minute break. And yep, thanks, Danielle. We'll be back at 9:50. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that short break. Um, Now we are going to be transitioning to our vapor intrusion partner panel. You can go ahead and share the first slide. Then click next, Thesar. Oh, go back one more. All right. Can everyone see the slides okay?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So my name is Rashani Dantas, again, Senior Environmental Scientist with the Division of Water Quality, State Water Resources Control Board, and I'll be the facilitator today for the Vapor Intrusion Partner Panel. So when a vapor intrusion contaminated site comes to a CalEPA agency for case review, the case manager has to consider many things, many aspects of the site, from the initial evaluation, risk assessment, mitigation remedial decisions, and evaluate overall whether the site is protective of human health. However, the case manager is one part in this process. While a site may be a case for our agencies, it actually represents much more. The site may be next to homes where families are worried about their health. It may be the first recreation center for a community, new housing for those that cannot afford it, or development of new small businesses. Understanding what a site means to everyone involved is critical to the evaluation and cleanup process of vapor intrusion sites. Today, we will have the opportunity to hear from many of these perspectives from the knowledgeable and experienced panelists on the Vapor Intrusion Public Partner Panel. Next slide, please.
Rashani, this is Danielle. Would you mind turning on your camera?
First, we have Renee Funston, Project Manager for Link Housing, and Maricela Fuller, Director of Real Estate Development for Innovative Housing Opportunities, Inc. Then we have Steve Lewis, Principal of Ramble. Next, we'll have Lenny Siegel, Executive Director for the Center for Public Oversight. Ignacio Dayrit, Program Lead, Center for Creative Land Recycling. And finally, Dr. Kelly Pinnell, University of Kentucky, Civil Engineering. Next slide. Our first panelists are Maricela Fuller and Renee Funston. Maricela Fuller is the Director of Real Estate Development for Innovative Housing Opportunities, Inc., IHO. Maricela oversees all aspects of IHO's portfolio ecosystem from planning to operation. She has more than 15 years of experience in the field and hands-on expertise in the public and private sectors for diverse types of housing across California. Her experience navigating vapor intrusion assessments and remediation, particularly on IHO's Lincoln Beach project, gives her firsthand insight into how environmental review impacts affordable housing delivery. Maricela advocates for more standardized, timely, and transparent regulatory frameworks that protect public health while enabling critical housing to move forward. Renee Funston is a project manager at Link Housing with 5 years of experience as the owner-developer representative for affordable housing development across California. She has led multifamily commercial projects through entitlements to 100% lease-up, including the first ground-up, cross-laminated timber multifamily mixed-use building in Sacramento. She has also worked in luxury coastal family multifamily development, streetscape public works projects, land use planning, local government, and state policy. Maricela and Renee, what are the challenges associated with developing affordable housing? How does vapor intrusion impact those challenges? Next slide.
Hi, Roshani. Thank you so much for having us. The work group and the CalEPA group presented a lot of forward-moving solutions, and we're going to kind of roll it back a little bit and take a look at answering your question as far as some of the challenges that we're having. And so in order to do that, we're going to look at one of the case studies. So as you mentioned, I and Renee worked on the Lincoln Beach project out in the city of Anaheim. So we can go to the next slide, and she's going to talk a little bit more about that.
Good morning, everybody. So to help frame things up, this is showing an article from the LA Times that's highlighting the challenges that were on Beach Boulevard in Anaheim. So Innovative Housing Opportunities had begun working on this project in 2022 through an RFP with the city of Anaheim. And this boulevard had been plagued with a lot of issues of illicit activity, including drugs, sex trafficking, and gambling. And a lot of the sites along this corridor had been sitting vacant and underutilized. And there were a lot of outdated, empty buildings, and there wasn't a lot of new development activity taking place. So a lot of us in our communities, we know what these places are like. We have these places that are just sitting empty, and we think about what it is that they could become. And next slide, please. So this is an aerial view of the site, and Beach Boulevard, the street that we were just looking at, is at the bottom of the screen. And then to the north of the screen is a lot of apartments and other residential uses. And so one of the key things that we do as developers is unlocking a site's potential and ushering in a community's vision for what they want the future to hold. And next slide, please. So these are renderings of the Lincoln Beach project, which is an affordable housing project. And for context, there's going to be 47 apartment homes, and the whole site is about 0.65 acres. And this project is going to be affordable housing for seniors and also transitional age youth, which are 18 to 24-year-olds who are transitioning from foster care or the probation systems. And really for the city, this was a key project that represents the future of Beach Boulevard. Next slide, please. And these are more renderings of the project, and these highlight how we're creating a sense of openness and connection, not only with their direct neighbors, but the greater neighborhood. So how it is that we're unlocking what this site can be for the greater community. And next slide, please. So, one of the key things that we are grappling with is why more of these sites are not being developed and why we can't transform more of these places from bleak, forgotten nothingness into beautiful homes that we're proud to have in our community. And so, as affordable developers, one of the key things that we are struggling with is just dealing with these multiple deadlines from different agencies, and particularly getting funding and having to deal with different state agencies and not being in coordination with one another. So one of the key dates on this timeline is in the center of the screen, April 2025. And so the dates on the top of the timeline are from TCAC, which is the California Tax Credit Allocation Committee. And this is the main source of public funding for most affordable projects in California. And so if you lose this source of funding, the project essentially dies. And it's extremely competitive. As we know, it's overprescribed. There's a lot of projects that need funding. So you often have to apply 4+ times in order to be successful. And then once you are awarded funds, you're on a really quick timeline. You have to move through the building approval process and other milestones. Otherwise, if you meet those deadlines, again, you'll lose the funding. And so simultaneous with dealing with the state funding agency, we were also dealing with DTSC cleanup requirements. And then there's also other timelines that we were dealing with at the same time that are not shown on the screen. And so we had needed to complete the DTSC regulated cleanup in order to meet that center April 2025 deadline. So this is the readiness date, which means that you have to close on all of the financing, have your building permit, and start construction. And we need a lot of certainty to get to that date because we have to bring everybody for the deal to the table. So that includes our investors and lenders. And we needed to have the site cleaned up, and we needed the DTSC seal of approval and assurances on what the budget was going to be looking like for the 30-year ongoing monitoring period. and so that the investors and lenders knew this is what we can all expect, and having the assurance that we had adequate budget. And so without meeting these milestones with DTSC, we therefore wouldn't be able to meet the milestones with TCAC, the funding agency. And a lot of budgets with affordable projects are already extremely tight. We don't have room for cost overruns. We had to shift funds over in order to account for the CTSC cleanup and the ongoing monitoring and testing. And that includes taking money away from other things such as resident services, doing value engineering to reduce the quality, streamline design, things like that. And so it's really important that we are asking that people understand that when we do get these different deadlines and criteria from other agencies, there's always got to be a give and take and pool, and how it is that we are therefore then balancing things. And I'll now pass it back to Maricela.
We go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Thanks, Renee, for that. So some of the, just kind of to reiterate the challenges that are created from this vapor intrusion requirement that's needed at this particular site. So test costs are really unpredictable. And because the lenders do require, they're really trying to build a clear risk profile for these projects. As for any projects, I mean, we are talking about an affordable housing development here, but any development that is being done, lenders are trying to get a clear risk profile. And so part of that is really determining the long-term certainty of cost. So with testing costs being unpredictable, there's also budget implications for ongoing requirements. There's a lot of consultants involved, not just the environmental consultants that are on the call, but we also had to rope in legal on this particular project. And really, ultimately, it's to identify, what are the long-term costs on this project and what mitigation looks like. And so we can go to the next slide, please. So this is an example of what, I don't know if we can zoom in at all, but this is an example of what a budget for ongoing monitoring looks like. And so there are variables here that aren't pinned down initially at this project period. So we have to take conservative approaches, and typically that means building in large contingencies in order to account for these costs. So, some of the variables are just the amount of probes and the frequency of testing. And then, based on this long-term 20-year plan, I mean, that is what is used in order to determine. We can't just determine, first couple of years. We do have to build out the budget all the way through for the life cycle of this project. So it threatens the financial viability of projects, and it makes it really difficult to predict the environmental risk and also meet all the regulatory expectations. Next slide, please. So the good news is on this project, we were able to meet all of the requirements, but it did take a very it took a big pull from a lot of folks. These are some of our partners that were on this specific deal. Shout out to DTSC because they did a lot of work working with us on this project to get it through. Next slide. So some of the things that we're hoping to get, and they were mentioned earlier on in the presentation, is just mitigation templates and cost guidance. I mean, this one wasn't really talked about a lot, but for developers, it was really difficult for us to identify what the cleanup strategy was going to look like. But in addition to cleanup strategy, the ongoing monitoring. There were no examples that we could use other than past projects. But these are all very hard costs that hit the project. And so anything that could be done in determining some cost guidance and also cost benefit analysis, I think would also be beneficial to projects going forward. Another thing is the conditional approvals in advance to financing. That was something that was talked about as well. Next slide. So I'm just going to add just a couple more, Renee, sorry. So I think, ultimately anything that we can do to move, from all of the regulators, moving them to actual partners and helping us determine how to move projects forward in a more cost-efficient way, and also looking at some of these different templates and cost guidance, I think would be really beneficial.
Yeah, and I'll also add that, in summary, we're really calling for forging a nexus between environmental regulators and developers. We're asking for holistic solutions and how it is that we continue evolving into the future. We understand that everybody can get in their silos, and there's so many different priorities that we have to focus on within our respective fields. But we just also ask that you look at the real world and take this case study as a consideration. Time's pretty short this morning, so we're happy to discuss further, and we put our contact information here so we can always have a further and more in-depth discussion. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maricela and Renee. Next slide. Next up is Steve Lewis. Steve Lewis is a principal in the Irvine office of Ramboll, a global environmental engineering and consulting firm. For more than 20 years, Steve has been helping clients with their most challenging environmental projects, with a focus on evaluating chemical occurrence and behavior, assessing human health risks, providing third-party review, and developing and implementing cost-effective investigation and cleanup strategies. Steve has a BS in civil and environmental engineering from Loyola Marymount University, and an MS and CE in civil and environmental engineering from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where his research focused on developing probabilistic methods to assess uncertainty and evaluate the reliability of models used for decision-making. He's a California licensed professional civil engineer. Steve, what are the challenges encountered in the process of characterizing, remediating, and obtaining closure for vapor intrusion sites? How do steps in the process, submitting reports, obtaining comments on those reports, implementing interim remedies, etc., impact the process?
Thank you, Rashani. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to begin by telling you what I will not be talking about today. My comments today will not be technical in nature and will not address CalEPA supplemental vapor intrusion guidance per se. I know many of you in the audience have expressed concerns about that guidance, as have I. For instance, my comment letter identified a number of concerns about the draft guidance back in 2020, including the technical rationale for the 0.03 attenuation factor, as well as the scope of that guidance. Many have raised concerns like these over the past 5 years, and perhaps they will raise concerns like those during this morning's breakout sessions. But instead, I'd like to focus on the challenges we at Ramboll, and no doubt other consultants, have encountered in the past few years in the process of investigating and cleaning up properties in which vapor intrusion is a concern, particularly redevelopment projects. So the emphasis here is going to be on the process. And then I'm going to offer some suggestions to address those challenges. And I just want to acknowledge, I was pleased to hear both Dan and Steve offered some suggestions that are aligned with my own, not all of them, but I just want to acknowledge that. So to illustrate, I'd like to tell you a story. This is a true story. It concerns a property located in Southern California. Our client was buying the property with the intent of redeveloping it. And as is often the case in situations like this, the seller's consultant had already done some investigation work beginning in February of that year. And this previous work identified the presence of trichloroethene, TCE, and other volatile organic compounds throughout the property at relatively high concentrations. Pretty typical site for Southern California. So everyone understood there was the potential for vapor intrusion, and our task was to supplement that data set and ultimately estimate how much it would cost and how long it would take to clean up the property. You might imagine it's the kind of thing that buyers, sellers, the people who finance these projects want to know. So we first mobilized to the property to collect samples later that year in September. We followed up in November, then again in December, and once more in January the following year. By January, we felt we had enough data to estimate the cost to clean up the property. And in June, we began cleaning up the property and mitigating the potential for vapor intrusion by installing an interim remedy, soil vapor extraction system, pretty standard technology for these kinds of sites. Now, those of you who work on these kinds of projects will recognize we accomplished quite a lot in just a year or so. Typically, each step or phase of investigation conducted under agency oversight takes roughly 3, maybe 6 months to complete. Why so long? Well, as we've heard, there's a process. Consultants begin by preparing plans, sampling plans, work plans, preparing to do the work. They then submit these plans to agencies for review. The agency folks review these plans, sometimes providing comments. Then the consultant goes out and does the work, summarizes the results in a report. The agency then reviews that report, again, perhaps providing written comments. In each case, the consultant is expected to respond to those comments by providing written responses. And sometimes this comment response process can go through multiple iterations, which can lead to timelines significantly longer. So how were we able to get so much done so quickly? Well, all this investigation work was done prior to obtaining agency oversight. By the time we applied for oversight, we had prepared a report summarizing a comprehensive data set that was appropriate for supporting decision-making and moving the project forward. And I feel at least as important, we had developed a robust conceptual site model that anticipated staff questions and provided answers to those questions. Had we done this work under agency oversight, it would have taken years. I don't know if the deal would have gone through. We definitely would not have been in a position to begin cleaning up the property as quickly. Which brings me to the challenge I want to focus on today. If you haven't guessed already, it's really the time it takes to go through the process of investigating and cleaning up these vapor intrusion sites. In preparation for today, I surveyed my Ramble colleagues and found that we have multiple projects under CalEPA oversight, currently subject to delays of months, several more than a year. We even have one project that's been delayed for several years. And a few years back, I was involved in another project that was also delayed for several years. So it's not like those delays are super uncommon. They definitely happen. And obviously delays like these can be a real problem. Look, we want to clean up these properties. Our clients want us to clean up these properties. We want to protect building occupants from vapor intrusion. And we recognize the process takes time. But time, well, time is money, and money is needed to do the work. So it's important to balance these considerations. But based on my experience, I came up with some suggestions for reducing the timeline and getting properties cleaned up and developed more quickly. First and foremost, we found that communicating schedule constraints with staff early in the project is critical. We've generally found staff are willing to work with us to establish milestones that we can all agree on. It's also helpful to continue to communicate as the project moves forward. I've worked on a number of projects that had weekly calls scheduled with agency staff, and those calls are really instrumental in resolving the issues that just inevitably come up in projects like these. Second, we found that front-loading investigations pays dividends down the road by streamlining the process. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying we simply need more data. I definitely am not saying that. We don't need more data. As I've indicated previously at a number of conferences, what we need to do is to squeeze more information from the data we have and better use the tools we already have, tools like data quality objectives to help us optimize our investigations and define our objectives. What kinds of objectives? Objectives like assessing human health risks, delineating the extent of impacts, designing and implementing remediation and mitigation measures. Overall, our objective should be to develop conceptual site models, those robust conceptual site models you heard about before that reduce uncertainty and support sound decision making. We found that these kinds of conceptual site models support our thinking as consultants, and they help CalEPA staff make decisions. It's important. I've been told there's something like 8,000 dry cleaner sites across the state of California. We can't possibly exhaustively investigate all 8,000 of these sites. To echo a comment we heard in the previous presentation, when we think about designing investigations, some kind of cost-benefit analysis is called for. Also, where appropriate, we suggest developing and implementing flexible investigation plans that allow for step-out sampling in real time rather than going through the comment response process each. And speaking of the comment response process, I definitely have some comments about that process. I also suggest focusing comments on substantive issues and encouraging more flexibility in resolving them. For example, one of my roles as a consultant is to serve as the consultant on behalf of the community at the Stringfellow Superfund site. And one of my tasks is actually to provide comments on reports prepared by the consultants on behalf of the responsible parties. Now, when I prepare those comments, and I admit I've definitely offered some pretty tough comments over the years, I really try to limit myself to substantive issues so we can keep focused on what matters. We've also found that to resolve particularly challenging issues, it's helpful to meet face-to-face and try and hammer out disagreements rather than going through multiple rounds of comments and responses, because as we found, that process, frankly, it takes forever. Another cause of delay seems to be staff workloads. Obviously, if staff are overworked, the work's not going to get done quickly. Perhaps hiring needs to be ramped up. Perhaps CalEPA can retain consultants to assist on an as-needed basis. I've seen that done in the past. Seem to work well. Then there are staff transitions, retirements, promotions, transfers. I get it. Fact of life. They're a fact of life for consultants as well. But I've seen some transitions completely derail projects, causing delays of months, if not years. And there's one last point I want to raise, one that we continue to find challenging, and that is implementing remedies. CalEPA staff tend to insist on completing all investigation work prior to implementing interim remediation or mitigation measures. And this just seems contrary to the stated objective of the supplemental vapor intrusion guidance, which is to protect building occupants from vapor intrusion earlier in the process of site investigation. Following that logic, I'd expect CalEPA staff to be more receptive to moving forward with interim remedies. I think it would be great if we could start to treat vapor intrusion sites the way we treat radon sites, moving on to solutions more quickly instead of dwelling on long-term, seemingly endless investigations. That's all I've got for today. I'd like to thank CalEPA's Vapor Intrusion Work Group for hosting this event and inviting us panelists to share our viewpoints. And I'd like to thank all of you for your attention. Back to you, Rashani.
Thank you very much, Steve. Next slide, please. Next, we will hear from Lenny Siegel. Lenny Siegel has been the executive director of the Center for Public Environmental Oversight since 1994. He is one of the American environmental movement's leading experts on both the vapor intrusion pathway and military facility contamination. He has served and is serving on several interstate technology and regulatory council work teams on environmental remediation, including vapor intrusion and PFAS, and a dozen national research council committees addressing military environmental issues. In July 2011, Siegel was awarded U.S. EPA Superfund Citizen of the Year Award for his work overseeing the Moffett Field MEW Superfund project. one of the US EPA's earliest and largest vapor intrusion investigations. He also served as the mayor of Mountain View, California in 2018. Lenny, what are the challenges encountered in the process of characterizing, remediating, and obtaining closure for vapor intrusion sites? How do steps in the process How do we improve the capacity of local government to coordinate with regulators to evaluate vapor intrusion and environmental issues? How can we increase more permanent remedies so that remediation serves as mitigation? For existing buildings, how do we ensure that occupants are protected?
Good morning, everyone. First thing I want to talk about is basically development or redevelopment from the perspective of local government. First, of course, we want to make sure that the people who move into the new buildings are safe. Second, the start of development planning often turns up a site that nobody knew about with potential for vapor intrusion. And third, there was a case in Mountain View where I played a principal role. The actual redevelopment of the site can lead to cleanup. It was an orphan site that DTSC had a plan, but nobody was going to pay for it. And we accelerated the development to get the cleanup done to help protect not only the people on that property, but an adjacent property. The problem is that local government doesn't really have the capacity in most cases to evaluate vapor intrusion, even though local government has authority that is in some ways more effective than what the regulators have. Because developers have to come to local government and ask for permission as opposed to being chased by the regulators to comply. So it's important that local government, one, learn how to cooperate, work consistently with the regulatory agencies, and secondly, that they have some level of understanding of vapor intrusion. The worst case was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where local government permitted occupancy of a housing site without the agreement of the regulators, who knew that it wasn't safe yet, or at least didn't know that it was safe. So it's important, one, to set up programs to train local planners to understand a little bit about vapor intrusion, and two, that there be ongoing relationships between regulators and local officials. Could I have the next slide, please? Yeah, I've been working with a team of people around US EPA that put on the workshop in San Diego in March. And what we've been come up with is that, vapor intrusion mitigation systems are usually pretty effective if designed right and operated properly. They aren't a long-term solution. And what we've been arguing for is, in many cases, actual cleanup can provide mitigation without actually installing vapor intrusion mitigation systems. Cleanup, of course, is more permanent. It can be installed more quickly than putting in mitigation systems in existing buildings. It provides an area-wide protection. Mitigation systems are for each building. If you install a robust soil vapor extraction system, that may protect the whole area. As many of you know, it's often hard to get into buildings to do indoor sampling, particularly if they are rental properties. And that's less of an issue if you're trying to solve the problem by doing soil vapor extraction between buildings. There's less liability for property owners and developers. There's the lack of a stigma. If you actually clean up, remove the source of the contamination from the groundwater or the soil gas, less long-term management is required. And as you've just seen, that's a long-term cost. And it actually pulls contamination away from places that people occupy. So what I believe and the people I'm working with believe is we should stop just thinking of mitigation as separate from remediation, but remediation, the actual cleanup of the groundwater and the soil gas, provides an opportunity to do a better job of mitigation. Won't work in every case, but it's something that we should be looking at. The third item that I want to address is, how to protect people, or how do people feel protected. And my biggest concern is this academic exercise of coming up with a better attenuation factor. And the reason for that is the attenuation factor is often used as an argument not to sample indoor air. If you're the occupant of a building and you've been told that the soil gas around your building has a cancer-causing substance, but we don't feel we have to sample the indoor air because our formula says that you're safe. Most people are not going to believe that. I know there's some people who don't care, but most people who are concerned about exposures um, don't like the idea of being told that the sampling will not occur. And so it's important, in my view, not to use any version of an attenuation factor to decide not to sample in a building. Yes, you have to figure out how to deal with background sources. People need to be educated that their gun cleaner or something else might cause a false positive. They need to know that not just because a screening level is exceeded, it doesn't mean everybody in the building is going to get cancer. Nevertheless, our experience in Mountain View in particular, working with US EPA, people were much more comfortable knowing that their indoor air was tested. But beyond that, we actually did mitigation in buildings that weren't tested because they were in that area. I think there is a scientific basis for questioning loose attenuation factors because of the uncertainty that when you've actually done the soil gas sampling or other sampling, you've sampled in the wrong place. And so when I talk to communities, I said, ask to have your building sampled. So again, just summarizing what I'm saying today. One is that local government has an important role to play at development sites, and there needs to be improved communication between local government and regulators. Remediation can provide mitigation in a way that our standard, sub-slab depressurization systems don't always provide. And third, think about what you would want if you were the occupant of a building above subsurface contamination. Would you rely on a formula that's been derived elsewhere? I guess that's all I have to say for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lenny. Next slide. Next, we have Ignacio Dayrit. Ignacio coordinates Center for Creative Land Recycling's Technical Assistance Program for redevelopment projects. Ignacio is a redevelopment expert, having spent 20 years with the City of Emeryville's redevelopment agency, where responsible for the city's Brownfield pilot project. He has over 30 years of experience in public sector development, including fiscal and financial analysis, public debt financing, feasibility analysis, and urban design. Ignacio was instrumental in the city's redevelopment of hundreds of acres of blighted, contaminated property. He holds a BS in architecture from the University of Philippines and an MCP from the University of California at Berkeley. Ignacio, how does access to data impact the ability to address/evaluate vapor intrusion for cities? What are the other larger non-vapor intrusion issues impacting development of low-income housing? Next slide.
Yes, you can skip this and maybe go to the next slide. And thank you to the board and DTSC for putting this together. My remarks today don't really represent what CCLEAR's position is, although it's shaped by my experience at the Center for Creative Land Recycling. I've been with CCLEAR for 16 years now, and kind of doing the things I do in helping communities redevelop brownfield sites. Now, when I say brownfield sites, these are not Superfund sites. Where typically we work with sites that do not have a responsible party or orphan sites, but we do work with those also. And I appreciate the presentation of DTSC and the regional board. It's very scientific, but in my experience at CCLEAR and even when I was at Emeryville, we really deal with a different world. We deal with getting projects done or helping people get projects done. And it seems like just looking at what DTSC presented, the regional board presented earlier today, and the other speakers, there's a little bit of talking past each other, and I think my remarks will actually even make that more obvious. I won't go too deep in attenuation factors. Instead, I'll talk about broader policies and in achieving California's objectives. And they are really actually climate resilience and housing equity. And so you see the quote on the screen, folks at Innovative Housing, there are many like them. And in the real world, we hear a lot about from people, from developers and cities, COGs, MPOs, and they develop RENAs. They're trying to get housing delivered. And they're trying to do this in infill. And so we're talking about vapor intrusion numbers and attenuation factors, but there are so many other factors that we're overlooking, and the people who are impacted by those are actually, very few of them are in this meeting, in this workshop. We're talking about vehicle miles traveled and air pollution resulting from that, protecting forests, the economy, and these are very broad topics, issues that the state is dealing with, and vapor intrusion is actually part of the solution, how it is managed. So let's see, I had to go rogue because the DTSC and regional board and the speaker's presentations kind of threw me off, and I feel like I'm reacting and also doing my own comments, but let's see. So let's go to the, so the premise here is infill housing is one of the most effective ways of reducing pollution and adapting to warming climate. Why? Well, because the land's already developed. There's infrastructure, services, and transit. Infill reduces pressures to pave over forests and farmland, and it limits vehicle miles traveled, or VMT. So there's widespread consensus on that, and I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but it's not really making it to this conversation. Infill housing has been slowed, has been mentioned here, and let's go to the next slide to see how it might be affecting. And I point out the 0.3, but there have been other numbers tossed around. But it's a very highly technical standard and has very far-reaching effects. But one thing that I keep bringing up, is that what was wrong with the previous, the last 20 years we've been developing infill housing? Is there data to show that housing was unsafe? Do we have health data? And so we are perhaps overlooking that there's been progress in the past in infill, and it's kind of come to the grinding halt. And it's led, again, you've heard confusion, inconsistency, because everyone's really operating at different level, different timing of adapting, affecting regulatory approvals. And it's driving this development to sprawl. And let's go to the next slide then. So what happens when we have this sprawl? Let's see, am I in the right slide? Actually, could you, yeah. So what happened, what California's been trying to do to help develop affordable housing, or being infill housing really, is, there's been lots of legislation the past few years, about 30 average over the past few years, to help develop housing related to land use and funding. But even with those changes, the time, cost, and complexity of infill is still a barrier. Most cities are stretched, as Lenny mentioned, and they don't have experts. They don't have VI experts. They're dealing with road repairs, safety services, and the mandates that are coming at them from legislature. There are state grants that come to that help with housing, probably in the 8 figures between DTSC and the water board. So that's in the tens of millions of dollars a year. But that's nowhere near what you need to help affordable housing and infill housing and the work needed to get that work done. So it's kind of a rock and a hard place for cities. They're mandated to build housing quickly, but many infill sites take years to assess and permit. Meanwhile, developers have little access to private capital, and cities have very little money to offer. Again, state grants help, but it only goes so far. Same thing for federal grants. Federal grants are drying up. This is the last year for major brownfields funding from the EPA. That might dry up next year. Of course, cities have lost their own money. They've lost, forget about Prop 13. I mean, that's a big problem, but redevelopment agencies are eliminated as well. So there's really no money at the city level. So what happens is, they can't do infill, so there's sprawl. So let's talk about sprawl. Next slide, please. So since 1990, here's some info on sprawl. Nearly 45% of new homes in California have been built in areas with high wildfire risk. And in some Bay Area counties, more than 80% of new homes are in the wildland urban interface. So I'm not gonna dwell on, that's a big risk. And we have wildfires every year. And so these cost lives, destroy homes, and we're spending billions to rebuilding these places that really aren't sustainable. Sprawl also contributes to climate change and health costs. Between 1990 and 2003, the vehicle miles traveled rose by 35%, outpacing road construction. So you're talking about other agencies that are kind of impacted by sprawl here. And that causes traffic pollution, asthma, respiratory illnesses, which especially hurt children and low-income communities. There are safety concerns. Traffic fatalities have increased. Deaths are no, despite better cars, we have safer cars now. There's still lots of deaths from driving, and many of these communities that are losing I'll just skip. I'm sorry. And lastly, California has a $4 million home shortage. That's 4 million. That's about 8 million people, and it's costing the economy about $140 billion in lost productivity. That's lost wages and construction jobs. So can you go to the next slide, please? So I just want to be clear, I'm not talking about ignoring environmental risk. If we had the money, and we should consider more conservative cleanups, but we don't. And cleanup policy must reflect both scientific evidence and practical realities. We regulate to protect public health and the environment, but not just to use the most conservative number. Actually, a more conservative number actually might expose people to more risk. An analogy here is lowering the speed limit to from 25 to 15 miles an hour. That might seem safe, but we know from many conversations that doesn't always usually work out. So we have to balance the goals of environmental, that's regulatory health, with housing, climate change, health, equity. And this means involving other agencies, not just CalEPA, but other agencies like Housing, Community Development, Strategic Growth Council, the Transportation Agency, so many others. Now, you can imagine putting them into the process similar to what DTSC and Regional Board described in their very measured way of studying vapor intrusion, but they live with the consequences when infill fails. So there's got to be some way of analyzing the impacts from the past and how it might play out. So as well as funding tools to fund additional cleanup if that's necessary, or to mitigate sprawl, or a combination of all within our limitations. Cities have certain tools, but again, they're limited, and many of those have been taken away. The state is really imposing a lot of mandates on the planning and funding level. So cities are really strapped. Other agencies that should be involved, including MPOs, those are metropolitan planning organizations, and COGs, councils of governments. Could you go to the next slide, please? So actually, maybe there. So I'm just going to close with this, that infill really is what CClear and what we did actually in Emeryville. We had no choice. Unfortunately, many other communities and developers have a choice. They can sprawl. And that's just counterproductive, actually worsens California's environment. And there should be some way, some cross consultation with other state agencies that are impacted by sprawl, climate change, and equity. We will be discussing a lot of these issues at the California Land Recycling Conference in Carson in September, where we talk about housing and infill and parks. And yes, we talk about vapor intrusion. So thanks so much for this opportunity, and I look forward to meeting you at some of the breakout sessions. Thanks.
Thank you, Ignacio. Finally, we will hear from Dr. Kelly G. Pinnell. Dr. Kelly G. Pinnell is the Earl Parker Robinson Chair Professor of Sustainability and Environment in the Department of Civil Engineering at the University of Kentucky. Dr. Pinnell is a licensed professional engineer with previous experience working for an international consulting firm. Dr. Pinnell is internationally recognized for her research involving stakeholder engagement, modeling fate and transport processes, and redefining chemical exposure conceptual models in communities. She's a leading expert in vapor intrusion processes, which involve the migration of subsurface vapors into indoor spaces. Her research has fostered informed decision-making in many communities and influenced policy framework changes at multiple jurisdiction levels. Dr. Pinnell, how can we determine when we have enough vapor intrusion data? How do we make decisions with the data we have, even though there may be uncertainty? Next slide.
So thank you very much. So first of all, I'm not going to answer any of those questions today, but I am going to hopefully just raise some thoughts and get us thinking more about it. I do interact with a lot of communities and different stakeholders, which includes industry and regulators and impacted communities. And I often say that when people call me, it's not because they have an easy vapor intrusion site. It's often rare that they don't already have a lot of data. So the idea of when do we have enough data and how can we make decisions with it is something that is typically exactly why people call me. They're typically, really already pulling their hair out, and they've already worked with a consultant or with an expert, and they're looking to me saying, what else can we do? And I'm just trying to partner with them and think at things coming at it from a different angle. So I'm just happy to share with you some perspectives. Next slide. So again, those two questions that I'll just think through and share some thoughts. These are the two ones we'll look at is, when do we have enough data? And then how can we make decisions, even though, and I'm just going to say there's always going to be uncertainty. And I know that that came up in one of the polls earlier today as, something that really does limit the path to closure. Next slide. So one thing that, of course, is very important at a vapor intrusion site is a conceptual model. And this is something that I start a lot of my classes with here at the University of Kentucky. It's a philosopher, but it really just helps us think about how all of us come up with a mental model. As soon as we walk on a site, we have an idea of how something is occurring. And it actually takes a little bit of work for us to counter what our expectation is of the physical system. And so this is a quote from this, old book, but it's actually really useful for us to just realize how much we're already imagining the real world is, even before we get data. And then as we start to collect data and redefine our conceptual model, we start reimagining how things are. But we never really know what's actually happening at a site. We're just happening to get closer and closer and closer. So in my work, what we do is we establish and reestablish mental models, which of course are just imaginations. We do that to define problems and to develop solutions by interpreting data associated with very complex contaminated sites and to make decisions about vapor intrusion. And I just want to emphasize, which has been talked about, the previous panelists and all of you here know how complex these sites are. And we're really talking about needles in a haystack where we're getting data from, and then we have to make decisions about that. So my research journey has reinforced the benefit of spending a lot of time thinking to try to understand when we develop and redevelop these conceptual models to really make the best decisions we can make and accept that there is going to be uncertainty. And where do we want that uncertainty to come from? So a lot of times I think we assume our uncertainty is going to come just from the data, just from our Excel spreadsheets, just from the database, or just from the data analysis. But I challenge that it also comes from where we're able to get access to data from, whether we're going into individual homes, whether we look at the community as a whole, how we conceptualize the problem is also the type of uncertainty that we're able to play with and to think about and how we might solve, come to closure for a vapor intrusion problem. And that's a little bit of a unique way of looking at this. Next slide. And so we'll start with just thinking about how to determine if we have enough vapor intrusion data. Next slide. So this is just, stuff that we've graphed, and we've published this stuff in a recent paper. And this came from a site, Mountain View, California, that we have worked on for about a decade. And there is lots and lots of data with this site. The upper left, bar graphs there, that shows, if you look at the upper left one, most upper left one, what that shows is some temporal data that was collected from a sewer. So we were investigating whether or not a sewer could be contributing to some vapor intrusion risks. But first, it's, temporal variability. And if it doesn't matter the exact values, what you want to just see are the trends. It's higher, then it goes lower, then it goes higher again. Well, how long do we have to keep sampling that to see the temporal variability there? And then as you move over to the right, that's spatial variability. You see that some places in the sewer system have lower concentrations, some places have higher. Okay, well, where is the highest? Well, that, we could keep sampling along that sewer main for a long time. We can zero in on where it is higher. And then if you move over to that right-hand side where you can see where we have, arrows that say groundwater, then we're looking at, well, where does the groundwater intercept the sewer invert? So there is lots of opportunities to really figure out that conceptual model and where is the source is coming from, and really think through and get really intentional looking at all different sources of data And yes, lots and lots and lots of data. But what I want to say is, at this point, we're still looking very broadly, spatially at more a community level. And that's what those two maps are showing. We're looking at a fairly broad community level here, as opposed to a single house. And when I give presentations about vapor intrusion, I often have a slide that will say something like, vapor intrusion is a community problem. And yet, I'll say, in many times when we see vapor intrusion guidance, we still see a conceptual model that is a single house, as if it's a building problem. Well, sure, it is a building problem, but I still say vapor intrusion is a community level problem. So when we're collecting data, are we collecting data to describe it at a community level or at a building level problem? And maybe we need data at both, but that is a lot of data. And so what I like to think about is we can maybe get highly precise, right? Precise being, location specific at a single home or a single building. But will we be really accurate for that? And then, at a community level, we might have low precision or high precision, low accuracy. And so that's what we often go for, is we start thinking, do we want to have high accuracy at the community level and low precision? And that's something I think that the vapor intrusion community could start thinking about, and thinking about it for site-specific reasons. Do you have many homes at this site, for instance? There at different times when again, it was over a decade, so there are different reasons we were there. There are many times we're looking at many different homes, several blocks. And that way we were really trying to characterize a community. So we really wanted higher accuracy at the community level. Lower precision at an individual building was okay. There's other sites I've been involved in where really we were trying to get very precise on that one building. And so that's how I think it's really useful to think about what you're doing. There's sometimes I get called and my feedback is, gosh, you're trying to accurately look, with precision and accuracy at every single home, and you've got 300 homes. And do you really need to do that? Why are you trying to do that? Because it looks like you're going to mitigate them anyhow. And so I think just being very clear about your goals, your intentions, and why you're collecting the data, that why part. Again, as a researcher, I don't have all the constraints, but it means I get to ask different types of questions. So I get very clear about my why, my research question. Why am I collecting this data? In this case, for this study, my why was I wanted to understand the community level. And again, I look at it as usually vapor intrusion is a community problem. I have yet to go into a community and see that vapor intrusion is a single building problem. And so that means that I design my studies a little bit different. Next slide. This is a paper that I published with an anthropologist. Again, since I'm an academic and a researcher, I get to work with interesting people that just bend my brain and make me think differently. And so Peter Little is an anthropologist. He also wrote a book many years ago. And this is a book actually on IBM Endicott. And so we collaborated on this article. And so this was several years ago in 2016, but Peter is a great guy to talk to. And so, we got together, we at a pub a couple of times, and then we drafted this article, we regurgitated it a few times. It's the only article I've ever published that got published in a sociology journal. But what I like about this is it really pushed us to think about a partnership, which came up also during this workshop, a partnership between practitioners or the VI scientific community, which is what I represented on this article, and then the homeowners, which Peter had kind of that perspective of. And when you go in to knock on someone's door, often when we think about background sources, we'll maybe just back away from those and say, well, that's a background source. That's not a VI source. And so we called that source science politics. That at a vapor intrusion community, if your data is showing that it's, from background sources, that's not a VI problem. But maybe you're missing an opportunity to partner with a homeowner. Because, for instance, especially once we get into conduit VI, you don't know that you're not later, let's say in 6 months, going to discover, oh crap, there's a sewer VI problem. Now I got to go and talk to that homeowner again. And I've just kind of didn't navigate that relationship so well. And so this article was really about, it says, I'll just read this quote, the last half of it. It says, it misses no cost opportunities to promote public health, suffers from a fallacy of technoscientific reductionism. Doesn't that sound like something an anthropologist would write? He taught me so many great words. And overlooks transdisciplinary opportunities to explore social environmental complexities. And I really think it does. And I think that that's where often when we think about uncertainty in data, we forget that if we don't get access to a house or future access to a location or a property, that's no data. That's nothing. And that also means no mitigation. And so that's just there, right? And then the property might get sold. So anytime we limit ourselves an opportunity to partner with a property owner, we're actually just getting no data. That's a loss for us, or a no win, I'd say. And so I just offer that as an opportunity. I think often when we just say, okay, well, we didn't get access to it, it's like, check that, it's not our responsibility. They didn't give us access. But I think we need to think of that as a no win and a loss of partnership. The other thing I'm going to say, and then it will lead me right to the next thing, is on a recent site that we were involved in, it seems like everyone these days has those ring cams. And in communities, they're very interconnected oftentimes. So if you're knocking on one door or accessing it, they're going to see you, even if you didn't get access. In no time, people are interconnected, and then they're talking about you. So they're sharing information, whether true or not, and that's influencing how people are going to respond to accessing their properties. And those behaviors you have no control over. And so again, making a good relationship and navigating that and partnering is really important in the data you're going to collect and the uncertainty in your entire data set. Next slide. And that leads us to another paper we recently published that focused on something called the social ecological system. So in a social ecological system, we think about these levels. Individual would be like an individual homeowner. The interpersonal would be what I just said, like, let's say you go up to a home and someone sees you on a ring cam and they're like, I'm not opening that door, but gosh, who's that person in a DTSC or with a consultant company? And so then, they text 5 of their closest friends in that community. They're influencing that informal network of friendships. Or maybe then they go on Facebook and they tell everyone. That's informal. And so, however, that data acquisition at that individual level, just that one home, is influenced by that individual's attitudes, beliefs, and practices. But they're able to influence that kind of social network of theirs through their interpersonal. That depends on, how connected they are. And people are pretty connected. I mean, we see that right now just in the world around us. They're, who you are connected with, that's interpersonal. Then you have organizational, that's a formal structured group. So that could be HOAs, formal communities, school systems, churches. And then we have communities. This might be something like a municipality. So all of these levels, and you have to think about when we go in to get data, where do we usually start and where are we most effective at? I'm saying community level is typically a vapor intrusion level issue, but often we're having to navigate at that individual level. But I'm saying we're getting undermined because people are connected at the individual, interpersonal, and organizational. And the typical vapor intrusion professional scientific community is not connected at that level. So as soon as you knock on that door, the community has already flooded it. And that's impacting the amount of data you can collect and the uncertainty that will be in your data. When you look at it as more a community level problem, then you can actually go and work, I think, from that way up. It's very hard when you're just starting at the individual because you will influence things with a lot of just not knowing how you're coming at it. And so we published a paper on kind of how to influence things that way. Next slide. Go on. Next slide. And so what we did with the mitigation thing was looking at all of those different levels. We then evaluated for how to mitigate something, considering all of those different levels, individual, interpersonal, organizational, and how they interplay with how we would mitigate a conduit vapor intrusion risk. We evaluated, sewer ventilation, whether we put in a gas trap outside of the entire developments. This is a multifamily development. Whether we treated all the wastewater going into the sewer system, or whether we treated it by putting in brand new plumbing joints in every single home. And what we did was we said, okay, red would be not very feasible or not useful, right? It just wouldn't be a useful way. Green would be, it's much more effective, it's easy, it's feasible. And what we found was it was really a low-tech solution. It was also very cost-effective, was putting in a gas trap outside, basically in the sewer lateral of the entire development. And it also turned out the developer paid for it, not the responsible party. So it turned out to be kind of a win-win all around. And it was a community level solution. And so by looking at it this way, which again looks at it very differently than we typically do, often you would go into each individual home because we would look at it as a building problem. But a building problem, by say looking at how to mitigate each individual home, you can see that we have those as a very complex, that bottom line there as far as that social ecological system complexity, that was going to be a very complex mitigation scenario. It would have been hard to achieve. There would have been a lot of uncertainty. We would have had to do a lot of follow-up testing. We probably wouldn't have gotten data to confirm mitigation. We ended up going with the least complex, a simple one that was also cost affordable. And so looking at how you're going to get access and just looking at it completely differently than we usually do by looking at it as a community issue, we are able to achieve what we considered a success for this site. And again, it was by defining goals differently, by beginning with the goal as our starting point instead of an ending point. So I think that that's all that I have. You can go next slide. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Pinnell. I want to thank all of our wonderful panelists for presenting and giving everyone a lot to think about. So here is contact information for the panelists. If you have further questions, we will also be making these presentations available to everyone after the workshop as well. Next slide. Again, I just want to thank you guys very much for participating in today's panel. Now we're going to move to a 5-minute break before we go into the breakout sessions. And we will be back at around 11:08. Thanks, everyone. Okay, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your short break and you had a lot to think about from our panel discussions. Now it's your turn, and we're going to transition over to our breakout sessions.
All right,
Go ahead.
thanks, Rashani. Hi, everybody. My name is Julie Johnson. Just getting my screen shared real quick. Sorry, 1 second. There we go. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Great, thank you. All right, so hello, everyone. It's great to see so many people with us today for our kickoff vapor intrusion workshop. My name is Julie Johnson, and I am the Senior Engineering Geologist managing the Site Cleanup and Department of Defense unit in the Division of Water Quality at the State Water Board. I'll be giving just a quick introduction before we separate out into the 5 breakout sessions that are planned, covering goals, ground rules, and logistics. Let's go ahead and dive in. So the main goal of the breakout sessions is that we want to hear from you. What are your successes, challenges, ideas, and questions? And who are you interested in hearing from? Your input will be taken into account to inform the structure, content, and presenters of the future technical sessions that Steve and Rashani have mentioned at the beginning of today's workshop. Each breakout session is dedicated to one of the 5 main topics impacting the VI community. Our focus in these sessions is to receive comments, questions, and general input on these specified topics. I do want to note that the breakout sessions are not intended to provide new updates on VI guidances, new regulatory outcomes, or results in decisions on current initiatives. All right, so some logistics for us. The breakout sessions will be 60 minutes long, and they will be followed by a return to the main workshop here, where we will hear summaries of comments received for the 5 different topics. While the main workshop room is being recorded, the breakout rooms will not be. We wanted to create a space where people feel comfortable speaking their comments and questions. I do also want to note that the chat will be available for use in the breakout rooms, including reactions, and the QA feature that's been on in the main room will be turned off. So when you return back to the main room, there we go, the QA feature will be on once again. I do want to acknowledge that we have, over 300 participants in this workshop and limited time. The breakout sessions have been pre-assigned based on your top 3 choices submitted during the registration process, and participants are being evenly divided among the breakout rooms to ensure that we can hear from as many people as possible. Due to the large number of participants, the breakout room hopping will not be turned on so that we don't overwhelm specific rooms. We understand that this may mean you are not in the room of your top choice, but depending on time and if all comments have been heard on the room topic, your facilitators may open the discussion up to hear input on some of the other breakout room session topics. You can leave and return to the breakout room at any time. If you choose to do so, you will be going back and forth between your assigned breakout room and the main Zoom room. There are 2 options to share your comments in the breakout sessions. You can share comments verbally or in the chat. In order to hear from as many people as possible, verbal comments will be limited to 2 minutes. We highly encourage the use of the chat. The chat for each breakout session will be saved and shared with the CalEPA Vapor Intrusion team. And finally, please feel free to use the reactions in the chat, such as a thumbs up, if you see comments that you support. All right, so once we're in the breakout rooms, we ask that everyone please keep in mind some ground rules. Please be respectful of each other's time and comments, and please respect that 2-minute time limit. Please aim to share feedback that hasn't already been heard and aim for constructive comments and questions. And finally, there are many perspectives, so please keep an open mind and respect each other's positions. A few notes on participant instructions. So everyone will remain muted until called upon. If you'd like to share a verbal comment, please use the raise hand icon on your Zoom screen. If you've joined us via phone, please use *9 to raise your hand, and when called upon, press *6 to unmute and mute once again. The facilitators will call names in order of the hands raised in the queue. When you're called upon, please unmute yourself, state your first and last name, and any affiliations. In order to prevent Zoom bombing, you must identify yourself in order to make a comment. Lastly, for verbal comments, please respect the 2-minute time limit when making your comments. And since there are so many participants in each breakout room, once again, we just really strongly encourage using the chat and using those reactions if you would like to. And then if there will be questions, how will questions be addressed in the breakout sessions? So facilitators will provide questions or will provide answers, apologies, to clarifying questions, and those will not be counted towards your comment time. If you have site-specific questions or questions on specific contaminant limits, those will not be answered in the breakout sessions, but we do ask you to share your comments in the chat. We will also be providing, once again, and it's at the bottom of this slide, emailing us at dwq-vaporintrusion@waterboards.ca.gov or vaporintrusion@dtsc.ca.gov in order to get you connected to the appropriate case managers. All right, so we're almost through. What will happen once you enter the breakout room? Your facilitation team will introduce themselves and give a brief intro to the specific breakout session topic for that room. Participant instructions will get a recap and will be shared on screen in the rooms. Your facilitators will have put together a few key topics or questions to jumpstart the session. And also feel free to start raising your hands and putting comments in the chat once you're in the room. And with that, thank you so much for your time and attention. And let's get on to the breakout sessions. You'll now be transferred into the breakout session, and we will see you all in 60 minutes. Thank you.
Well, welcome back, everyone. I hope there was some good feedback given during these breakout sessions. Give a minute or so to make sure everybody's joined back in. Great. Now we will have each breakout room report out the main ideas from each session. Conceptual site model. Michael, can you give a brief summary of the key ideas that you heard in the breakout session?
Sure. Thanks, Roshani. So we had a slew of questions near the end, but some overall topics were 4 areas. So for lines of evidence and multiple lines of evidence, which lines of evidence does DTSC prefer or weigh? Examples of the J&E model cases as a line of evidence. For CSMs, ways for data and sampling techniques and informing a CSM. And then the majority of the questions were towards future DTSC trainings, such as site-specific attenuation factors and closure guidance, providing more complex case study examples, trainings specifically for PMs from DTSC on CSMs for consistency in sites, and then also additional DTSC guidance in VOCs and soil vapor for landfill closure, separating indoor air from subsurface sources, maximum versus 95% UCL usage for sites, ambient air quality standards, and there was more said but we made sure to tell our breakout room to include those in the comments. Those are just some overall topics.
Great. That sounds wonderful. Thank you, Michael. All right, let's go next to vapor intrusion in the community. Tamara.
Hi, yes. The hot topic today in VI in the community was community outreach and engagement. Specifically, we talked about building relationships with the community prior to holding the community meetings, like starting with PTA meetings or city council meetings. We talked about knocking on doors and being more present. During communication and engagement, using plain language and no jargon. We also discussed the use of fact sheets and possibly even using social media to get to communicate with the community. Another thing we discussed was some common mistakes during public participation and some challenges. A big challenge was not being visible, and a mistake not being visible. We talked about language justice and the issue with needing information in several different languages. We talked about risk communications, not communicating the risks and diminishing trust, and being clearer and transparent with contractor vetting. And just that people have the right to know what's going on, so communicate much clearer.
Great comments. Thank you, Tamara. Okay, let's go to path to closure. Angus?
Yep. So we have kind of a few categories of comments. The first one is the use of attenuation factors. The use of either 0.03 or site-specific attenuation factors when we consider case closure. There are a few comments on investigation and sampling, including what kind of chemicals that should be analyzed for and used in risk assessment. We have comments on long-term monitoring and how to demonstrate plume stability and stable conditions when it comes to remediation systems endpoint or closure. And then some comments on risks and how to manage low risks at VI sites. A few comments on basically case management, collaborating with other agencies, or case closure documentations, examples for no further action sites, determinations for sites, some other methods for or procedures for affordable housing development that has a different timeline. And then lastly, on community engagement and risk communication and about the public perception of VI risks, even if concentrations of certain chemicals are below screening levels.
Great. Thank you so much, Angus. All right, let's go to collective decision making with vapor intrusion partners. Saru?
Yes, we had a really good discussions regarding decision making with the VI partners. It started with what works and then what are the limitations. So basically having these recurring meetings, open communication, having an open mind, and then works for the identification of the problem and remediation and eventually site closure. There are some of the impediments are like, okay, how to communicate, having some bias based on the perceptions. And another point of discussion was, so how this vapor intrusion mitigation are like, building attenuation factor gonna apply to the scenario when we have these longer plumes, very technical discussion there. And then it was really like interesting point when one of our community leader mentioned that less than 1% of the budget is spent on community engagement, and the importance of kind of like spending more money, involving them in the discussion from the very beginning when we are doing the technical work at the site. Again, some roadblocks is like that it's back and forth between the regulatory agency and the consultant. Rather than having that, is it possible to have this communication and then have these monthly meetings? There were some comments on like how some regional board have been able to solve that problem with expedited claim, and then with a quicker turnaround time. And then there was a point where it's kind of like involving the local government. So we have this regional board, but again, there are local government in the communities that needs to be involved. And one point that kind of struck my mind also was like, okay, there are a lot of rental properties, and when the property owner do not live in a place where there is contamination, what do we do when the homeowners are not in a place? How do we get access? How can we involve the people who are actually living versus who are actually, owning the property? And again, some discussions about like social justice group involvement of them, and then even the social justice group having some technical expertise, understanding what the technical terminology means, understanding the science before talking about those. And then when there is a new building and when there is like a beauty salon, what are the impacts of the background concentrations of these contaminants, and how the literature kind of help us. So looking into the literature from a clean site, and then kind of compare the value that you get from your site would be helpful, rather than doing multiple sampling, which is eventually the cost. So again, and then again, the training for the regulator, again, managing a site in a technical perspective is different than managing with the people or talking with the people, and then how can we incorporate. So those were the few highlights of our discussion. Very good discussion, very constructive comments. With that, that's all I want to say regarding this breakout session discussion.
That's some wonderful information. Thank you, Saru. And then finally, vapor intrusion data, Stephen.
Thanks, Prashani. Hi, everyone. So one of the key topics we wanted to discuss at this was what are some key factors to look at in regards to VI vapor intrusion into the building. Some of them were like building type, building design and foundation, building area, and vapor intrusion mitigation systems. That's some of the ones of the mass list that we talked about. So that's much for our group to consider. Another topic was how much confidence would we have with a tool that predicts current or future VI risk at a building based on performance of similar buildings. Some of the topics that was discussed were there were some potential concerns with data that is submitted to some oversight agencies, and further discussion is that the outcome was oversight agencies will continue to review submitted data, ongoing data, and the ones that have been submitted in the past, and they'll also rely on accredited labs to ensure the data is accurate. Another topic we want to talk about is database in general and submitting data, VI data to these databases. There are a variety of factors that I won't be able to cover on here today, but there's a lot of factors for the database teams to consider. The databases will continue to update the systems to meet the needs of the programs, and we will continue to do training and outreach to the public on any database updates that will come in the future as well. And finally, one more thing, Rashani, are there any databases or attenuation factor studies that we should be considered? And there's a variety of studies to be considered out there. I won't be listing out today, but we will definitely be considering in the future. Thanks, Rashani.
Thanks so much, Stephen. Great information. I want to thank you all for your comments. It was great to hear the comments, the feedback in our breakout sessions today. Really, really enjoyed the feedback that everyone was giving. So if you'd like to provide further input, please feel free to continue to send your comments and questions to dwq-vaporintrusion@waterboards.ca.gov. I think we heard a lot of great feedback today, and we look forward to hearing more at our future technical workshops. For those of you that also added comments in your registration forms, those will also be included in our reviews of feedback. So now I would like to turn it over to Craig Sanchez from the Department of Toxic Substances Control for some closing comments.
Thank you, Rashani. So I want to thank all the attendees today and those who have worked so hard to make this workshop happen. It definitely takes a competent team to pull something like this together. I also want to acknowledge all those who came before us paving the way on VI, as well as those carrying the torch forward with this integrated, holistic approach. I want to remind everyone that what we discussed today was not regulation. Our goal was to demonstrate that while protection human health will always be our #1 priority, we are open to flexibility, alternative approaches, and seeing things from other perspectives. We strive to be evergreen in our approach as well as our thinking and look forward to ongoing collaboration. We will take the input from today and integrate it into our public technical workshop for this fall. Vapor intrusion is complicated. If we learned one thing today, is that it definitely takes a holistic approach. We cannot do this without you. If anyone has any questions or comments regarding VI, please do not hesitate to reach out to me directly or anyone on the team. We are here to collaborate, and I hope that we have demonstrated that today. Thanks again, and have a great day.
Thank you, Craig. Again, I want to thank you for joining us today. Our workshop PowerPoint presentations, English and we have created Spanish versions. The workshop recording and materials will be made available through an FTP site. So just please send us an email to gain access. Please again continue to send us your comments through our dwq-vaporintrusion@waterboards.ca.gov. Again, I thank you for attending today's workshop. For those that would like to stay, we will start our optional 30-minute Q&A. And Julie, you can go ahead and start the Q&A.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Roshani. So hi, everybody. Julie Johnson here once again. So we have many of the CalEPA vapor intrusion team staying on to do an optional, or I should just say, to do a Q&A session for the next 30 minutes. So you'll have myself going through. If you have any questions, please go ahead and raise your hand. We would love to start calling on people. You can also put some questions into the question and answer, but that's really just more for technical questions or clarifications. But if there are questions you'd like to ask, we definitely encourage you to raise your hand. As of right now, I don't see any, so I do just want to reiterate all the things that Craig and Roshani just said, that we really, really appreciate everybody's participation today. These events are only possible in how useful they are because of everyone's participation, and we just really, really appreciate it. Let's see here. So I do see a hand. There's no name attached to it, but it says 2706 JTS. We'll go ahead and ask you to unmute. You should be able to speak now.
Hello, this is Jeff. I did not get the session on the upload for the GeoTracker, but I guess the question I have is, if you do not have a site with the State Water Board, how do you how would we support this database for vapor intrusion as far as paired sampling with subslab and indoor air? Can I upload the EDFs if I do not have a case site or a site number with you?
So
Oh, sorry.
Steve, you want to hop in? Go for it.
I'm just going to hop in, and if Tina's still on, she can hop in too. Who's your lead agency? Is it a local agency or a DTSC? Is your lead agency?
Well, I mean, I work with several different, Santa Ana Water Control Board, LA County, but DTSC in particular, I have several sites with, which is EnviroStore, and we submit to them, but we don't upload to GeoTracker necessarily. And there's some Koopas as well that they do the uploads. We don't. So how do I ensure that we upload properly to GeoTracker to make a more robust database for you if I don't have a case with State
Steve,
Board?
I'll take this. I will take this. Let me take it. Hi, my name's Dana Cardano. I am the manager of the GeoTracker database as well as the UST cleanup program at the Water Board under Steve McMasters. So that is a great question. So DTSC actually has the same capabilities of upload as GeoTracker does. So similar to GeoTracker, it has an ESI portal where you would go and claim your site and you would upload the data there. So we're encouraging everyone to keep uploading your data into that database. Currently, they don't have the building tool within EnviroStore, but I am working with the EnviroStore team about getting that kind of mirrored. They're going to get it put into their ESI portal. So you will end up having the capabilities to do that, to put in the building information. But for now, the most important thing is going to be the data. And, you know, just making sure you have clear names on your data points so that we can distinguish whether they're pairs or anything like that is going to be really important moving forward. You know, the building information is going to be really important eventually, but I think right now our main focus is just making sure we're getting that data. And as for local agencies, so if it is a local oversight program under the UST cleanup program, they are required to have all of their information in GeoTracker. If it is an local agency that is certified under AB 304 for cleanup oversight, they are also required to have all of their information in GeoTracker. So it'd be the same process you use with the Santa Ana Regional Board. And then as for Coupas, they are the only things that Coupas upload to GeoTracker are, and it's not even fully rolled out yet, is the tank pool portal, and that's only for underground storage tank removal. So Coupas should not, unless they are self-certified or certified, so if they're self-certified local agency for site cleanup or a certified LOP for UST cleanup, Coupa should not be uploading that information. It should be uploaded by it should be uploaded by the RP or their consultant, their representative, or you can have DTSC or the water boards help you with those uploads too.
Okay, so there's an avenue to get some of this data uploaded. Okay.
Correct. And so I think if you have questions specifically on the process on how to upload through EnviroStore, they do have a help desk that you can contact. And also you can also contact that VI email address. And I'm sure that DTSC can direct you to the right person to talk to.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you both very much. All right, moving on to the next hand that I see up, Richmond Shoreline Alliance, which is Janet Johnson. Janet, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to point out, I did put a question in the Q&A regarding soil vapor extraction and its limited utility in coastal sites. We have a site on our southeast shoreline, a very large, complex, former chemical manufacturing site that we have a technical advisor who has told us that the system's effectiveness is limited, decreasing, and highly vulnerable to flooding. It was out of commission for 5 months last year. And this is something that you will find all around the bay. There was so much industrial activity right next to the bay for generations. So in the first part of this fabulous webinar, SVE was just sort of dropped as, oh yeah, this is going to work, but it's not going to work here. It's not going to work on shoreline sites that are subject to flooding. So it's important that the technical people start looking at this with a different, try and get a different approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. I'll pass it to Ben.
I thank you for bringing that up because it is a really important point to bring up. When we're looking at vapor intrusion sites, I think a lot of us will acknowledge that SVE is the go-to remedial option, but there's a lot of situations where it may not work due to high water tables or low K soils in the vadose zone, that we really need to get a good site-specific evaluation before we're moving forward with any remediation or even mitigation decisions. And it just highlights the need to understand the site, have a good conceptual site model, and I think highlights the complexities that, vapor intrusion, it's not a one size fits all approach, just like the rest of environmental remediation. So thank you for bringing that up, Janet.
Thank you both. All right, the next hand that I see up is Jeremy Squire. Go ahead, Jeremy. You should be able to unmute.
Hello, thank you. We've been working on a lot of sites with a lot of different case managers around the state, and there seems to be a very different set of interpretations for what is temporal assessment or temporal variability assessment. And, one case manager will say, oh yeah, as long as the measurements are taken, say, 2 months apart, we think that that's sufficient. We have other case managers that will say, no, it's absolutely not sufficient unless they are 6 months apart and they have to be within the same 12-month period. And so we kind of go back and forth where it's not clearly defined in the guidance. And so case managers have just taken it upon themselves to define what it means to them. And I'm hoping to get some clarity on that.
Oh, thank you for that. And I can talk a little bit about that. There's some flexibility, right? And I think we do. I got to back up a little bit because my mind's all over the place. Guidance on how much temporal space you need between probes. Typically, we're looking at seasonal variation, and I think that's the language that the supplemental vapor intrusion guidance uses. It's also really important to have conversations around what the data is actually going to be used for. A rebound test may be different than that initial screening. And I think, the best thing is just having those upfront conversations with your project managers or your unit chiefs and your technical team to say, this is what we're going to do. You guys are cool with this, right? And I know a lot of us have those conversations frequently. DTSC, the water boards, we're working at getting some more consistent guidance out for our project managers. That's part of these workshops and part of some internal training we're developing. It's really helpful to have that, what does, temporal coverage mean? And I think we can add that's really helpful to hear. But at least in the meantime, for individual projects, again, the faster and the more you can have a scoping meeting with your project manager to say, this is what I think temporal variability means. I want to get you on the record saying it's what you think it means too, is helping as we develop kind of standard processes around some of this. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm going to weigh in on that too, and thank you for bringing that to our attention. I think that's absolutely something the work group and stuff, and a part of our training with the staff and eventually the public, we're pretty clear on that front. But yeah, it's about seasonal variation, as Ben said. Thank you, Ben.
All right, thank you all. Looking through, let's see, I don't see any new hands up. Jeremy, I still see yours, but let's go ahead. All right, I do see a new hand up. Let's see, I'm not sure if this is a first or last name, but N. Perriott, go ahead and ask you to unmute. Should be able to speak now, please.
Hi, my name is Nadine Perriott. Thank you. I find that many of the local agencies, so the county level, really don't feel empowered to consider alternative screening levels that are not the San Francisco Bay ESLs. So I'm located in the Bay Area, and we default to the ESLs a lot. I don't think that there's been enough to empower the local agencies to consider other site-specific attenuation factors short of going straight to indoor air sampling. And what I'm hearing on this workshop is that the 0.03 is really, a really baseline screening criteria. And I'm just wondering if there could be any more done to engage with local agencies to empower them to consider alternative screening levels based on multiple lines of evidence.
Steve, Ben, would one of you like to top in?
Sure. We work with a lot of the local agencies. I think DTSC manages DTSC and the Water Board both manage some of their ability to oversee those environmental cleanup sites. And we are trying to put together trainings to make sure they feel empowered to move off that 0.03 attenuation factor and consider site-specific data. I think that's been a common theme from a number of the breakout sessions, as well as just what our panelists brought up is making sure that we're getting the word out that 0.03, it's a good starting point, especially when we don't know very much about a site. That's where we want to go, but that we do want to make sure that our case managers, project managers, local agency partners feel like they're empowered to make site-specific decisions once that site-specific data is collected. So that's good feedback for us, and we can bring that up in some of our local agency roundtables.
Thanks, Ben. Was there anyone from the CalEPA BI work group that wanted to add anything else? Doesn't look like it. Okay, thank you very much for that comment. I appreciate it. Looking over at the hands, I don't see any raised at this point. I don't think there's been too much else coming in on the chat. Ben, did you want to say
We
something?
did have one question that came up during the presentations on why is housing for poor people being built on landfills? I wanted to just address that really briefly. At CalEPA, DTSC, and the Water Board, we don't make the land use decisions. So when development projects come to us, they're typically approved by the county, approved by the city, and our role is to say, okay, if you want to do this, here's what you need to do to make it safe. And here is the monitoring that we're going to require, potentially that's remediation, mitigation, or long-term monitoring to make sure that what you're proposing to build is going to be safe for that community, both on the property that is being built on and the surrounding community. So at least from where CalEPA is coming from, I know this isn't a complete answer to your question. Our role is really not to make that land use decision. It's to say, okay, if this land use decision has been made, what do we need to do to make sure that people are protected?
Thanks, Ben. Really appreciate that. I do see that we have a new hand up. Let's see, the name is USRS 142544. I'll go ahead and ask you to unmute, and you should be able to unmute now.
Hi, can you hear me? Somehow my name doesn't show up.
We do hear you. Yes, if you could please share your
okay.
name, we'd appreciate it.
Thanks. I haven't had the chance to look in detail at the new or the updated ESLs, but are the ESLs being harmonized with the DTSC screening levels? Because, sometimes people tend to want to use the DTSC numbers and only use the ESLs when the Water Board is providing the regulatory oversight. So I was just wondering, it would help if it would be a consistent number rather than flipping from one agency to another.
Do we have Nicole Fry or Angus on that could help answer that? I can do my best to answer it if they're not.
I see Nicole.
Okay, great.
Go for it.
Yeah. We just got the screening levels put out, and in terms of the screening levels, one of the big places where we are really in line with consistency is on the toxicity values that are used for the human health-based screening levels. And
Right.
so we are in line with DTSC on those, and then a lot of the exposure parameters are the same, and so in most cases a lot of the screening levels are the same. There are a few differences. You can kind of think of, we've got the RSLs from US EPA, and they have recommendations about exposure parameters, and DTSC has slightly more conservative. And at the water board, we just use the exposure parameters that US EPA recommends. And so there are some slight differences in some screening levels still. But in general, yeah, for a lot of the screening levels there, they are the same.
I want to pass
Oh,
it
I
to
thought
Jen
maybe
Stackhouse.
that the water board applies the toxicity criteria developed by OEHA, similar to DTSC.
So
But
that's, we collaborate with OEHA and DTSC. So the toxicity values that we use are all collaboration between the three agencies, and they are in there's the toxicity rule that, it's promulgated that we have to follow.
I do want to pass
Okay,
it to
thank
Jen.
you.
Thank you so much for your question. I want to pass it to Jen Stackhouse from DTSC for some further response.
Yeah, no, thank you for that summary, Nicole. I will say the main difference as far as the exposure factor does account for the skin surface area. So that would really impact your soil screening levels. So just like with any project, right, is make sure that you're speaking with your regulatory team to figure out what's most appropriate for your site. But there are differences, so they're not necessarily uniformly lateral or could be used on every single site. So again, it's really important to make sure that you're reaching out to your project team and your regulatory team to ensure that the appropriate exposure scenarios and screening levels are being used for your project.
Thanks very much for that follow-up, Jen. All right, looking at our list over here, I don't see any hands up at this moment. Let's see. I think we can give it a few more minutes. There we go. We have another hand. Let's see. I believe it was Ms. Harriot again. You should be able to unmute.
Since the floor is open, sorry. Just on the ESLs, has there been any thought on taking the DTSC's approach of essentially removing the soil gas ESLs and relying on applying a attenuation factor to indoor air, just maybe to further empower local agencies to consider something other than a published ESL?
Nicole, would you like
Yeah,
to
I'm still here. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you.
I haven't heard anyone propose that before. Yeah, but yeah, typically we get a lot of feedback that people like having the value so that they don't have to do the calculation. So that is historically how we've done it. And I think I'm a little skeptical that it would help that much. But I think it's going to be more about really educating these agencies that, the screening levels shouldn't be used in the way that they are using them. Yeah.
Thanks, Nicole. I don't see any other hands up right now, but if anybody has a question or comment, please go ahead and raise your hand.
There is also a comment in the Q&A as well.
Go for it.
Just to make sure it's from Rafat Abbasi, just to make sure 0.03 is a sub-slab AF. Soil gas data from US EPA 2012 study was invalidated. 0.03 is the only applicable to residential basements in colder climate zones. California has about 5% basements. Also, there are very few data points from one site in California. You may want to look at the box and whisker plot in US EPA 2012. We have to be careful when we say what is the best available science.
Thank you for the comment, Rafat.
Yeah.
All right. I do see, did someone want to provide a quick response? Otherwise, I do see a hand.
I was just gonna say, thank you, Rafat, and we captured that in the VI data breakout notes. So we do have that recorded as part of things to think about with the VI database. So I appreciate that comment.
Thanks for that follow-up, Tina. All right, I see a hand. It is Jamie Slaughter. I will go ahead and ask you to unmute. You should be able to unmute now.
Thank you. And my apologies in advance because like I mentioned in the breakout room, I do have limited experience with vapor intrusion. Like I mentioned there, I work on the Santa Susana project for DTSC and we have most of our buildings demolished. So we really just deal with soil vapor and air monitoring. But my question is more data centric because that's sort of my my history and strong point. And I'm sorry if this is already being considered and this is a stupid question, but my question is sort of because in the way that attenuation factor is considered that like impact air concentrations for indoor air concentrations, my question is, does this happen, environmental or structural changes that are like, you know, like building renovations or just things that are going on in the environment outside of these buildings where the indoor air is being measured or changes in land use? Are these things considered and being reevaluated so that way the conceptual models that are being used are being modified or edited? And if so, how often does that take place? And when that happens, how is that information or change communicated so that way the different scientists or consultants that are working on the project, like statewide, have awareness that this has been changed, if this even happens?
Great question, Jamie. I'll pass it to Ben.
Yeah, and that is something that we do look at and is a big part of why you'll see a lot of projects, at least in DTSC world, end up with a land use covenant or some sort of long-term monitoring, even if that's a check-in or a periodic inspection. You know, our land use covenants require an annual inspection, and a lot of that is to catch just what you just said. If there's been major changes in the building, major changes in the area around the building or in the community that could call into question the decisions that were made on those site-specific attenuation factors or whether the remedy is protective. We also, it's a little bit less consistent in our land use covenants, but we're typically doing 5-year reviews. Sometimes those are really quick and easy. Sometimes they're a little bit more involved depending on the remedy. But that's the point when we are really looking at have there been changes that might make us revisit the decisions that were made? So we usually have an annual small check-in, every 5 years a larger check-in. And again, this is going to depend somewhat on what contamination remained in place when the site was closed. As I mentioned, this might have been in the breakout room. You know, there's a difference between a vapor intrusion mitigation system with 100,000 micrograms per cubic meter of PCE in the subsurface and how we evaluate a vapor intrusion mitigation system when there's 3,000 micrograms per cubic meter of PCE in the subsurface. But we do have those points where we're able to check in and make sure nothing's changed.
Thanks very much for the question, Jamie, and thank you for the response, Ben. All right, I see no other hands up right now, and we do have one more question in the chat, so this will be the last one in our Q&A session today. Thank you all for the questions that have come in so far. We've really appreciated it. The final question is, does CalEPA expect any changes with the reduction in force in research and development at the federal level, US EPA? We've already seen them delay the issuance of the RSLs. Could this also impact CalEPA's acceptance of alternative default attenuation factors? So I'll open that up to the VI team.
This is a big level, high level kind of policy type question. I don't think what's going on at the federal level is going to have an impact on what we're trying to do here at the CalEPA level. We do, however, want to coordinate the best we can with US EPA on the vapor intrusion front. They're part of our team, and we have to be accountable. We here at the Water Board and DTSC, we also jointly oversee a lot of our military facilities as well, and with the vapor intrusion front. And they're following the 2015 OSWR guidance with the 0.03 attenuation factors. So I feel like what's going on at federal level is not going to impact us at all. We're going to continue communication, and if we come up with something different in the future, we will have those communication. We'll have those conversations with them, and if CalEPA decides to go in a different little direction, we'll just make that very clear and be very transparent on that front. And welcome DTSC to weigh in on this as well.
Yeah, I would agree, Steve. Certainly not necessarily with the attenuation factor study. Possibly with PFAS and as an emergent chemical constituent of concern. There could be some reduction in research in terms of cleanup levels, innovative technologies to remediate PFAS. It all feeds into vapor intrusion, but that's more on the horizon, certainly not affecting the attenuation factor study.
All right. Great. Thank you so much for the question, for the answers. Much appreciated. At this time, I'll go ahead and pass it back to Roshani for our final closeout. Roshani?
Yes. All right. Well, I just want to thank everyone again for joining us today. We really appreciated all the feedback that we heard. We will be considering all your comments, reviewing them to help us plan our future technical series, which we want to engage you more in these discussions. So please continue to send your comments through the DWQ Vapor Intrusion email. And again, we will be making the workshop materials available through an FTP site, and you can contact us through this email to get access to those materials. Thank you so much. I want to just thank our wonderful CalEPA staff for all the hard work they put in to plan today's workshop and put everything together. I also want to thank our panelists who did a wonderful job providing these different perspectives. And thank you all for your wonderful feedback and joining us today. Thank you, and we will see you soon. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.